Today's shipwreck video will be quite a break from the others. We are, after all, leaving surface ships and turning to submarines. There are some interesting wrecks here, of course, such as the various fleet boats discovered by the Lost 52 project. Most recently, the rather famous USS Harder. And by recently, I mean last month as of this upload. This video, however, will look to the Atlantic and the Royal Navy. We'll be looking at the wreck of HMS Thistle, a T-class boat sunk in 1940. And, as the title says, by another submarine. That was pretty uncommon, to say the least. Although not quite as unique as the sinking of U-864, while both boats were submerged. Probably a topic for another video there. In any event, Thistle is an interesting case. A very early sinking, and one done by another submarine. That makes her wreck one worth looking at. But, as always, we'll start by talking about the sinking. This came on April 10th, 1940, not even a full year into the Second World War. On that day, HMS Thistle was patrolling off the coast of Norway. She had been sent there in preparation for the German invasion, which began on April 9th. Having submarines in the area was a sound precaution. However, it would lead to Thistle's demise. While patrolling on April 9th, she came upon a German U-boat on the surface. That boat was U-4, one of the early and very small Type II U-boats. Thistle promptly fired a spread of 6 torpedoes, all of which missed entirely. Although U-4 spotted one sail by within 10 meters, so it wasn't a terribly aimed spread. More bad luck than anything. At this point, U-4 promptly crash-dived and evaded Thistle until after midnight on April 10th. The British boat, for its part, surfaced and reported in. That final report noted she missed a U-boat and had 2 torpedoes remaining. Thistle was ordered to change her patrol area, but never responded. That was because U-4, still lurking in the area, spotted the British boat on the surface. This was at 2 a.m. on April 10th, 1940. The small U-boat fired 2 torpedoes at Thistle, with one missing. The other one found its mark and sank the British sub with all hands. 53 men in this case. The unfortunate British submarine vanished from history at this point. Her wreck was only found very recently, as in last year, as of this recording. The wreck of HMS Thistle was located by the Norwegian Institute of Marine Research in spring 2023, at the relatively shallow depth of 160 meters or 524 feet. This wreck was mostly confirmed as Thistle on a second visit in October of 2023, making this one of the most recent notable shipwreck discoveries. That second voyage confirmed it wasn't another British sub sunk in the same general area. HMS Oxley, a victim of friendly fire, and probably deserving of a video. But that's for later. Because with all of that covered, we can now look at the wreck. There's not a lot of footage or images, but I'll cover what there is. First, I'll note there isn't any sonar that I've been able to find. While the wreck was initially located by scanning the seabed, those scans haven't been made publicly available. So we'll be going straight to the wreck this time. A wreck that is, evidently, broken into 3 pieces. Thistle was only hit once, but it's likely she broke apart as the sub sank. As one of the 3 pieces is the missing conning tower, which wasn't located, she was probably hit amidships. I can't say that with absolute certainty based on the released information, however. Regardless, Thistle is about as rough as you'd expect, and yet also better in some ways. Despite the shallow depth, the sub isn't rusted out as badly as some others, probably because of the cold Norwegian waters. That's especially apparent here on the bow. While there's definite rusting, the marine growth isn't terrible, and you can easily make out the torpedo tube. In fact, you can even see the latch to open it here. That's a level of detail pretty uncommon on shallow water wrecks in the Pacific, and certainly impressive to see after 80 years underwater. Further out, though, there's some pretty bad damage. The curve of the hull implies the visible tube is the external one, the classic T-class hump. As for the damage, that's pretty bad. The side plating has been blown out badly. That said, it seems to be limited to a relatively small section of the hull, looking at how narrow the plating is. Still, it's very terrible damage. Moving past that, however, the bow seems to be resting on its side, looking at the orientation of the visible tube. That seems to be further confirmed with this image. I believe this is from the same general area, as this certainly looks like another torpedo tube. Maybe two, if this bit here is a tube as well. Although it is notable that the marine growth is worse on the underside of the wreck. Still not terrible, but definitely more noticeable. Either way, we can now move further back, and we see one of the dive planes here. It's almost fully extended out from the hull, and in one piece. It's interesting to look at the different colors of metal with a clear dividing line. The general condition of the hull is also pretty good. No real damage or rusted out spots. The next picture, however, is less pretty. While we get a photobombing eel as a reminder that animals make wrecks their homes, the hull is rough. Much more corrosion and visible growth here. I think this is the deck, judging from the rough patterning barely visible, and the orientation matching with the tubes earlier. If the hull is on its side, this would likely be the deck. In any case, I'll let the eel have its home and move to the next image, which would seem to be an entrance hatch further towards the stern. This is pretty covered in silt, but like the torpedo tube earlier, still recognizable, latch and all. It's also firmly closed, though that's not terribly surprising. If Thistle sank quickly, there wouldn't have been time to try and open the hatch. Looking at this picture of the boat on the surface, I believe this area is in the stern, although I'm not 100% certain without further context clues. A bit further back from there, we have this hole. I'm admittedly unsure what this actually is. If anyone has any ideas, by all means let me know. Regardless of what it is, this general area is in decent enough condition. There's no major damage, and judging from the grading here, not much rusting. Now the next couple pictures, these are definitely the stern. This one here is from a bit further out. You can see a couple capstans here, and looking further back, where the pressure hull begins to taper towards the rudder. Interestingly, the overall condition is pretty good. There's no visible damage, aside from maybe a crack here. Otherwise, the hulk is in pretty pristine shape. Relatively speaking, of course. Moving further back, we find the overall condition to be the same. But there's more detail. Here we have the start of the shaft. Just like before, there's no visible damage of note. This far back from the break, Thistle seems to be more or less in one piece, something emphasized when you move even further back and look at the stern itself, specifically the extreme stern. It's a bit dark to make out, but you can see where the hull ends here. Just like before, there's not much in the way of visible damage, although this shot is a bit darker, so much of the detail is lost. From a bit further out in the same area, you can also see more of the shaft mounting, although the actual shaft, and prop for that matter, is buried in the mud, if it's still attached at all. With that said though, we're nearing the end of this video. Just a couple more pictures with parts I can't completely identify, such as this, which is a side shot of some form. From the narrowness of the pressure hull, I'd assume this is the stern, but there's not much in the way of features to say for sure, just the overall shape. The most interesting part here are definitely the holes, but that's about it. As for the next one, well, I think this is the periscopes. It seems to match in general shape. And this right here looks like a periscope torn from its mounting. If so, this would have fallen away from the conning tower, since, again, that was apparently missing entirely. The next picture for its part is the second to last. Here we have another look at the deck with some debris next to it. This is close to the ends, either bow or stern. Deck plating has fallen away, exposing what looks like another hatch. Unfortunately, there's not enough detail to say much more. Not where it is, or what the debris to the side actually is. Which brings us to the final picture, which, from all indications, is the break. The hull is shattered here. Pieces broken in multiple directions, with visible cabling here. And the hull bowed out here, before completely breaking a little further along. It's too close in to make any definitive statement on where the break is. As I said earlier, I guess the general area of the conning tower, but that's impossible to say from this mess of debris. Either way, this brings us to the end of the video. Thistle is an interesting wreck, a mix of decent preservation and broken hull. For her age and depth, the sub is actually in good shape. Maybe a further survey will go back at some point in the future and find the conning tower, if there's anything left to find at all. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I'll see you in the next one.